to the demonstration of how to plant your blueberry bush, part of the Putnam County 4-H Blueberry Project. Today we're going to talk about the different medias you can use to plant your blueberry bush, and then I will demonstrate some proper techniques on how to do so. So let's start off with the media. First, the component that we'll use today is the pine bark mulch fines. Make sure you look for the bags. You can buy bags of this from the local box stores. Just make sure you look for the pine bark fines and not the pine bark nuggets. The nuggets are going to be really big and too big to use for your potting mix. So the pine bark fines are going to be much more smaller and easier to use, and a better component. We use pine bark because of its acidity levels, and it contains a lot of acidity, as well as it's going to add the pores and air pockets that you need to keep your roots healthy. The next component that I'll talk about is the sphagnum moss that we use. You can buy a pretty large brick of this from your box stores. It comes usually compressed, as you can see below. You want to make sure that you wet this material before you start using it. Let it soak. That goes for all of the medias. You need to place it in water and let it soak up for about an hour to 2 hours, and then let it drain. You want your material to be wet but not super soggy. So sphagnum moss is going to be your water holding component of your soil media. It's also going to add a little bit of acidity and will kind of be the glue to the potting mix. One of the downsides is that sphagnum moss is harvested from the wild and not really easily renewed. So, and it also becomes a little hydrophobic, meaning it doesn't absorb water as readily when it dries out. So this mixture, you want to make sure you keep it wet, or you'll have some problems watering it later. So the next media that you can substitute for peat moss is actually coconut coir, and it is actually shredded up coconut husks, which is part of the coconut industry. So it's a renewable resource. It has a closer to neutral pH, so it does not add that benefit, but it is very absorbent of water, just like sphagnum moss. But unlike it, it absorbs water much more readily than the peat moss. I won't be using this in the mixture today. Again, it is another alternative. You can purchase this in two different ways. One is loose, but another way is buying compressed bricks of it. This little bit will actually make about this much media. So you can buy them in compressed bricks, Amazon, or at Lowe's or Home Depot. Sometimes you may have to order it, but again, you can get a lot of it for a little bit cheaper than you can the peat moss. Of course, the other things that we need to have for today is a pot for your blueberries. I would like, it's better that it's about 18 inches deep. This is probably just a little bit beyond that, but I'm not going to fill it all the way to the rim. I'm going to actually fill it so it's about the bottom of this lip here. And of course, we want the blueberries that we are going to plant. So let's start making the mixture of the potting mix. If you remember in our presentation, the blueberry presentation, we are going to use equal parts of pine bark fines and the sphagnum peat moss. So what I'm using as a equal part is I'm going to fill up to this bottom line about right here of both mixtures, mix them up and put them, start putting them into the pot. So let's get started by filling this pot up with this pine bark. It's very important that when you're handling any of this potting mix that you should have work with gloves. It'll save your hands from drying out really bad with the pine bark, and also sphagnum moss is not very good for your hands. There are some funguses that can live in the peat moss. So definitely you want to make sure you wear gloves. So so that took about everything I made. Again, the mulch is really wet. Put it in our mixing bucket. Put equal amount of the peat moss, which is always also pre-moistened. I did that earlier today. Both in there, equal amounts of those. Give it a good stir. Make sure everything's nice and mixed up. This is the time of year that you would normally plant blueberries, about mid-December. So if you haven't planted them in a pot yet, you still have time to do so. Your blueberries probably are looking like they're ready, budding. Hopefully this colder weather slowed that down a little bit, but this will get them nice and ready for you to grow. So you may not be able to see it from that angle of the camera, but my mix is pretty mixed up. The pine bark incorporated with the sphagnum moss. So I think we're ready to take our plant and put it in the pot. So to begin with, and I should have probably saved a little bit of this, but I'm going to actually add a little bit of the pine bark fines to a layer of pine bark fines to the bottom of my pot. I'm doing this because I want to make sure that there's a good layer of porous material on the bottom so that the sphagnum moss does not run through the holes and clog them up. So I have about an inch of mulch on the bottom of the pine bark fines. And I'm going to start filling this up halfway. with the mix I just made. Now when you're putting this in, you don't want to mash it down. You want it to be nice and fluffy. This ensures you have good air pockets in there, in which the roots have air, need air to breathe. So don't smush it down at all. I have it about filled to halfway, about right here. I'm gonna check to make sure my blueberry bush is about level to, like I said, I want it just below that rim. Take it out. I'm looking, before I put it in, I look for any roots that are pretty thick that are wrapping around the outside. There are any, I would break those or cut them depending on how thick they are. Remember, blueberry roots aren't very deep, so you don't need a super deep pot. About 18 inches is what they recommend. So I don't see any roots going around. I'm gonna go ahead and make sure I see the root there. Let's see. Take a little bit off the top here so that I know where the top of the blueberry actually the roots are. So I'm gonna put this level to about the rim and make sure it's centered, and then I'm gonna backfill the hole. So you want to make sure that you, once you put in your potting mix, that you gently tap down in the mixture so that the bush is nice and snug, and it won't tip over. So after that, you can also, if you'd like, put a little bit of sprinkling of some more of the mulch on top, which will help with keeping the moisture in the pot. And from there, you would wait for new growth to start and then fertilize. So I hope you enjoyed this demonstration. I look forward to any suggestions on how to make this sound better. And thank you very much for joining me. Have a great day.